There is a moment in Season 6, Episode 26 of Adventure Time, aired January 29, 2015, where a giant toddler looks at two con men and says, in a voice that does not belong to a child, "Before there was time, before there was anything, there was nothing. And before there was nothing, there were monsters." The screen fills with writhing shapes. The child's eyes go dark, and for exactly 11 seconds, a cartoon about a boy and his dog becomes the most terrifying thing on television. That child is the Lich, or what is left of him. And the fact that annihilation can wear the face of innocence is not a narrative trick. It is the thesis of this entire show. The Lich is not a villain who wants power. He already has it. He is not a villain who wants revenge. He has no grievance. He is not even a villain who wants to rule. He wants nothing, in the most literal sense of that word. He wants nothing to exist. He wants the absence of everything. And when a character's only motivation is the complete cessation of all life across every dimension, you are no longer watching a story about good versus evil. You are watching a story about whether existence itself has any right to continue. If any of that sounds like something worth thinking about for a while, subscribing to the channel genuinely helps make these long videos possible. And it is completely free. To understand the Lich, one first has to understand where he comes from, and the answer to that question is older than the show itself suggests. Adventure Time premiered on Cartoon Network on April 5, 2010, and over the course of 10 seasons and 283 episodes, ending with the series finale Come Along With Me on September 3, 2018, it built one of the most intricate mythologies in the history of animated television. But the Lich predates all of it, not just in the timeline of the show, but in the conceptual framework that makes the show function. He is the thing the show was always going to have to reckon with, because he is the question every post-apocalyptic world must eventually answer. If everything already ended once, what stops it from ending again? The Lich first appears, or is first referenced, in Season 1, Episode 25, titled His Hero, which introduces the legendary warrior Billy. In that episode, a song plays recounting Billy's greatest feats, and among them is the defeat of a creature called the Lich. It is a brief mention, almost a footnote, the kind of detail that passes without much weight on a first viewing. Billy, voiced by Lou Ferrigno, is presented as a retired champion who once protected the land of Oo from its greatest threats. And the Lich is named as simply one of those threats. Nothing more. No description of what the Lich is. No indication of what he wants. Just a name in a list of accomplishments sandwiched between slaying an evil ocean and rescuing Cotton Candy Princess from the fire count. But what Pendleton Ward and his writers were doing was planting something. They were placing the name of a thing that would not fully reveal itself for another full season. A thing that would become the gravitational center of the entire series. The Lich was not introduced with fanfare. He was introduced the way a real threat enters a life. Quietly, in the background, already there before anyone knew to look for it. And this is the first thing is essential to understanding how Adventure Time treats nihilism. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with drama. It is already present in the foundation, waiting for someone to notice. His first true physical appearance comes in Season 2, Episodes 24 and 25, Mortal Folly and Mortal Recoil, both airing on May 2nd, 2011. These episodes function as the Season 2 finale, and they represent a tonal shift in Adventure Time that the show never fully reverses. Before this point, the series is largely episodic, funny, strange, inventive, sometimes poignant, but fundamentally safe. The stakes are local, the threats are containable. The world of Oo feels like a playground, bright and elastic and forgiving. Mortal Folly changes that, not through a gradual escalation, but through a single rupture. The Lich breaks free from the amber prison beneath the Candy Kingdom, a prison that the hero Billy had placed him in years before by kicking the Lich's face into a tower and sealing him there as he prepared to attack with green flames. And when the Lich breaks free, the show breaks with him. The colors darken, the music drops away, the comedy recedes. What follows is not an adventure, it is a pursuit, and it feels like dread. The visual design of the Lich in these episodes deserves attention because it communicates his philosophy before he speaks a single word. Where other villains are designed to look cool or menacing or imposing in ways that invite a certain kind of admiration, the Lich is designed to look wrong. His body is a decayed humanoid form wrapped in tattered robes. His skull-like face features empty eye sockets that occasionally flicker with a sickly green glow, the same green as the mutagenic radiation that gave him physical form. His horns curve upward like a crown, but not a crown of authority. A crown of bone, a crown that is part of his body, grown from it, inseparable from it, as if the act of ruling and the act of dying were the same thing. He does not move like a living creature. He drifts. He hovers. He occupies space without seeming to interact with it. He is in the world but not of it. A visitor from an ontological category that should not exist within the bright, rounded, softly colored aesthetic of Ooh. And this visual dissonance is itself a form of argument. It says, without words, that the thing the eye is looking at does not belong in this world, that it comes from somewhere else, somewhere older, somewhere that the rules of Ooh do not apply. The mechanism of his escape is worth noting because it establishes a pattern that will repeat throughout the series. A small snail, a background character who appears waving in every episode of the show as a running visual gag, crawls into Finn's backpack. When Finn is brought to the Lich's amber prison by Princess Bubblegum, who has sensed a disturbance, the snail approaches the amber. Its eyes glow green, and it cracks the prison open. The Lich does not break free through his own power. He breaks free through corruption. He takes something small, something innocent, something that exists purely as a joke, and he turns it into an instrument of destruction. This is how nihilism works in the real world, not just in the world of Ooh. It does not overpower, it subverts. It does not arrive as a grand philosophical crisis announced with trumpets and existential dread. It arrives as a small thought in a quiet moment, a flicker of doubt during a happy occasion, a brief, almost imperceptible question that crosses the mind while doing something once enjoyed. Why is this happening? Does this matter? Would it be noticed if it stopped? These are small thoughts, background thoughts, snail in the corner thoughts, and they are the Lich's method. It takes the things taken for granted, the background details of a life, the things assumed to be harmless, and turns them into instruments of destruction, and you do not notice until it is too late. Princess Bubblegum gives Finn the gauntlet of the hero Billy, the only weapon capable of harming the Lich. What follows is a chase episode across the landscape of Ooh, with Finn and Jake pursuing the Lich while the Ice King, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, pesters them about his romantic obsession with Bubblegum. The contrast is deliberate and effective. On one level, there is comedy. On another, there is existential terror. And the show holds both levels simultaneously, refusing to let one collapse into the other. This is important because it establishes the show's fundamental relationship with nihilism. The response to the void is not to stop laughing. It is to keep laughing while acknowledging that the void is there. There is a moment during the chase in Mortal Folly that illustrates the show's tonal genius. Finn is pursuing the Lich through the landscape of Ooh, armed with Billy's gauntlet, the only weapon that can harm the undead horror. The situation is desperate. The Lich is heading toward his well of power, and if he reaches it, he will become unstoppable. And in the middle of this life or death pursuit, the Ice King appears. He is oblivious to the crisis. He wants to talk about Princess Bubblegum. He wants permission to marry her. He is, as always, pathetic and persistent, and completely out of touch with the gravity of what is happening around him. And because of his interference, Finn misses several opportunities to strike the Lich with the gauntlet. On the surface, this is comedy. The Ice King is being his usual self, and the timing is terrible. But on a deeper level, it is something else entirely. It is the show demonstrating that mundane foolishness and cosmic horror exist simultaneously, in the same world, at the same time. The Ice King is not comic relief that interrupts the Lich's story. He is part of the Lich's story, because the world does not stop being absurd just because something terrifying is happening. The refrigerator still hums during an earthquake. Birds still sing during a funeral. People still argue about parking spaces while the climate changes. The petty and the profound coexist, always, and the show's willingness to hold both in the frame at the same time is what makes it honest. The Lich is out there heading toward his well of power, and the Ice King wants to talk about his love life. Both of these things are real. Both of these things are happening, and neither one cancels the other out. This is what living in a world that contains nihilism actually looks like. You do not stop having trivial problems just because existential ones exist. In Mortal Recoil, the sequel episode, the Lich possesses Princess Bubblegum herself. He enters her body after she falls into his well of power, a noxious pool of glowing green liquid located in a pre-war subway station. The Lich uses Bubblegum's body to attempt to complete his plan, but Finn and Jake, with the unlikely help of the Ice King, manage to freeze the possessed princess, driving the Lich's spirit out. The cost, however, is real. There is not enough of Bubblegum's physical mass left to restore her to her adult form. She is rebuilt as a 13-year-old, a transformation that affects the dynamics of the show for episodes to come. The Lich, even in defeat, takes something. He always takes something, and this is another feature of nihilism that the show understands intuitively. Even when you survive the encounter with meaninglessness, you come out diminished. Something is lost. Something is always lost. And here's the first thing is worth noticing about the Lich that separates him from every other villain in this show. Every other antagonist in Adventure Time has the Ice King, originally a man named Simon Petrikov, is tragic. His transformation from a caring antiquarian into a deluded ice wizard is one of the most emotionally devastating arcs in animation. Marceline's father, Hunson Abadir, is complicated, a demon who loves his daughter but cannot stop being a demon. The Flame King is political, a ruler who manipulates his own child for strategic advantage. Even Lemongrab, in all his screaming dysfunction, is understandable. Their motivations can be traced back to something recognizably human: loneliness, hunger, control, pain, the desire to be loved, the fear of being forgotten. The Lich has none of this. He is a void where personality should be. He is a silence where motivation should be. He is the space left behind when every human quality is removed from a character and leave only the function. And the function is ending. That is all. That is everything. He is a verb, not a noun. He does not exist. He happens. When he speaks, which is rare, he speaks in declarations. There is no negotiation in his voice. There is no ego. There is no desire for recognition or dominance. He simply states what is going to happen, and then he tries to make it happen. He does not monologue because he enjoys hearing himself talk. He does not gloat because he derives pleasure from victory. He speaks only when speech serves the purpose of ending things. And even then, his words are sparse, stripped of ornament, delivered with the flatness of a geological process. Ron Perlman, the actor who voices the Lich, brings a quality to the performance that is almost impossible to describe accurately. Perlman, born April 13, 1950, in Washington Heights, New York City, is an actor known for embodying characters of enormous physical and vocal presence. He played the title role in Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy in 2004 and returned for Hellboy 2: The Golden Army in 2008. He played Clay Morrow, the national president of the Sons of Anarchy Motorcycle Club. On the FX series Sons of Anarchy from 2008 to 2013, he voiced Slade, the primary antagonist of the animated series Teen Titans, from 2003 to 2006. He narrated the Fallout video game series, delivering the iconic line about war never changing. His voice carries the weight of mythic authority. It is a voice that sounds like it was carved out of stone and left in the rain for 1,000 years. But as the Lich, Perlman does something different. He removes all personality from it. The voice is deep, resonant, ancient, but it is not performing. It is not trying to intimidate. It is not trying to seduce or persuade or threaten. It simply is. And that absence of affect is what makes the Lich terrifying in a way that no other animated villain achieves. He does not want anyone to be afraid. He does not care about fear. Your fear is irrelevant to him because you are irrelevant to him. Admiration is irrelevant. Resistance is irrelevant. Existence is irrelevant. He does not hate. Hatred would require him to acknowledge significance. He simply does not register anything as something worth considering. Any living thing is a candle in a room he intends to demolish. The candle's opinion of the demolition does not factor into the plan. It is worth noting that Pendleton Ward originally wanted to cast Tom Waits as the voice of the Lich. This fact, while a minor production detail, reveals something about the character's intended energy. Waits is an artist whose career has been built on the beauty of decay, on finding music in broken things, on celebrating the crooked and the worn. His voice sounds like gravel and whiskey and a road that has been traveled too many times. If he had voiced the Lich, the character might have carried a different resonance. Something more romantic, more tragic, more aware of what it was destroying. Perlman's performance, by contrast, carries no such awareness. His Lich does not mourn what he destroys. He does not notice it. And this is why Perlman was the right choice in the end. Because nihilism is not tragic. Tragedy requires a sense of loss, and loss requires a sense of value. The Lich values nothing. Therefore, he can lose nothing. Therefore, he cannot be tragic. He can only be empty. This is the core of what makes the Lich a nihilistic figure, and it is worth pausing here to define what that term actually means, because nihilism is one of the most misunderstood words in philosophy. Most people, when they hear nihilism, think of someone who believes in nothing, a person who shrugs at the world and says none of it matters, a bored teenager in a black shirt, a cynical adult who has given up on caring. But that is a cartoon version of the concept, and ironically, Adventure Time gives us something far more precise, far more dangerous, far more honest. And this emptiness is what distinguishes the Lich from every other portrayal of death and destruction in popular media. Think about how death is usually represented in fiction. Death is the Grim Reaper, a robed figure with a scythe, skeletal and grinning, but also somehow personable. recognizable, even a bit campy. Death is Thanos snapping his fingers, a dramatic gesture with dramatic consequences. The kind of death that makes for good cinema. Death is the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, an army that can be fought and defeated, that follows rules, that has weaknesses. All of these representations of death, while compelling, share a common feature. They give death a personality. They make death comprehensible. They allow the audience to look at death and feel something specific: fear, awe, dread, even excitement, because they frame death as an event, a thing that happens, a dramatic moment within an ongoing narrative. The Lich does not do this. The Lich does not frame death as an event. He frames death as a condition, not something that happens, but something that simply is, permanently and without drama. He is not the hand that turns off the light. He is the darkness that exists after the light is gone. He is not the period at the end of the sentence. He is the blank page after the period. And the blank page does not have personality, it does not have motivation, it does not have style or menace or theatricality. It is just blank. And the Lich at his core is just blank. He is the absence of content presented as content. He is the negative space in the painting that turns out to be the point of the painting. And the fact that Adventure Time manages to make this blankness compelling, manages to make people think about it and feel it and remember it years later, is one of the show's most remarkable achievements. Nihilism, in the philosophical tradition, is not a mood. It is a position. It is the claim that existence has no inherent meaning, no objective purpose, no built-in value. The universe is not going anywhere. It does not have a plan. It does not have a preference for life over death, for order over chaos, for good over evil. These are categories that human beings invented to organize their experience, and they have no more objective reality than the rules of a board game. They are useful. Sometimes. They are comforting often, but they are not true in the way that gravity is true or that light has a finite speed. They are stories we tell ourselves, and nihilism is the moment when the stories stop working. Friedrich Nietzsche, who is most commonly associated with the idea, did not advocate for nihilism. He diagnosed it. He saw it as a crisis. In his 1882 work, The Gay Science, he wrote that God is dead, and by this he did not mean a literal deity had perished. He meant that the structures Western civilization had built its meaning upon, religion, metaphysics, absolute morality, the promise of heaven, the fear of hell, the belief in a cosmic order that rewarded virtue and punished vice, were collapsing under the weight of scientific rationality and secular thought. Darwin had published On the Origin of Species in 1859. The Industrial Revolution was remaking human society at a pace that no philosophical system could absorb. The old answers were failing, and what Nietzsche feared was not the death of God, but what would rush in to fill the vacuum. What would rush in, he warned, was nothing, a void, the total absence of value. This he called nihilism, and it was not a destination he wanted humanity to reach. It was a pit he wanted humanity to avoid. The Lich does not avoid it. The Lich is it, and this is worth emphasizing because it shapes how the show uses the character structurally. The Lich does not appear in most episodes of Adventure Time. He appears in perhaps a dozen episodes across the entire run of the show, with major roles in even fewer. And yet he dominates the series. He dominates it because every episode, whether he appears in it or not, exists in a world that he has defined. Every episode of Adventure Time takes place in a post-apocalyptic landscape shaped by the same forces that produced the Lich. Every character in the show lives in the aftermath of the Mushroom War, which is the same event that gave the Lich his physical form. The Candy People are mutations from the same bomb. The magic that permeates Ooh is radiation from the same blast. The entire world is a wound, and the Lich is the infection that lives inside it. Even when he is not on screen, even when no one mentions his name, even when the episode is about something as trivial as Finn going to a party or Jake learning a new stretching technique, the Lich is implicitly present. He is the context. He is the backdrop against which every small, gentle, funny, human story in the show plays out. And the show knows this. It uses this knowledge to create a tonal depth that no other animated series has matched. The lightest episodes of Adventure Time carry weight because of the Lich. The funniest jokes are funny in part because they are being told in a world where annihilation is not just possible but has already happened once and could happen again at any moment. He is not a nihilist in the colloquial sense of someone who does not care. He is a nihilist in the philosophical sense of someone who embodies the absence of all caring, all value, all meaning. He is the void given form. And the show understands, with a sophistication that should not be possible for a program aimed at children and young adults, that this makes him the most dangerous kind of antagonist. Because an absence cannot be defeated. No one can punch a vacuum. No one can argue with a silence. The Lich does not oppose life in the way that a predator opposes its prey. He opposes life in the way that cold opposes heat. He is not the enemy of living things. He is the condition that exists when living things are removed. Consider his most famous speech, delivered across multiple episodes but crystallized most clearly in the Season 4 finale, The Lich, which aired on October 22, 2012. This episode, the 26th of Season 4, represents one of the darkest half hours in the history of Cartoon Network. In it, the Lich has secretly killed the hero Billy, the same Billy who once defeated him and sealed him in amber, and is wearing his body like a suit. Billy's face, Billy's voice, Billy's mannerisms, all preserved and performed by the thing that murdered him. The Lich, inhabiting a dead hero's skin, manipulates Finn and Jake into gathering the gems of power from various crowns throughout Ooo and assembling them in the Enchiridion, a magical book that serves as a key to the multiverse. This deception works because Finn trusts Billy absolutely. Billy is his hero. Billy is the reason Finn became an adventurer in the first place. And the Lich exploits that trust with perfect precision, not out of cruelty, but out of efficiency. He does not enjoy the deception. He does not savor the irony of a hero's idol being used as a puppet. He simply identifies the most effective path to his goal and takes it. And this utilitarian coldness is more disturbing than any amount of cackling villainy. The plan works, the portal opens, and just before the Lich steps through it, the facade falls away. A gumball guardian blasts the disguise, and Billy's skin peels back to reveal the skeletal horned face beneath. The Lich's design, which has been compared to the Horned King from Disney's 1985 film The Black Cauldron, itself adapted from Lloyd Alexander's series of novels, The Chronicles of Prydain, is a masterwork of visual horror. The skeletal face, the empty eye sockets that sometimes glow green, the color of radiation, the color of the mushroom bomb that gave him physical form, the crown of twisted horns. He looks like what death would look like if death stopped pretending to be natural and admitted that it was hostile. And this is one of the most devastating moments in the entire series, because the show takes its time with the reveal. It does not rush the unmasking. It lets the audience sit with the horror of it. Billy, the hero, the legend, the greatest warrior Ooo has ever known, has been dead this entire time. And the thing that killed him has been wearing his face, speaking with his authority, and using his reputation to manipulate the people who trusted him most. This is not just a plot twist. It is a violation. It is the Lich demonstrating that nothing is sacred, that no institution is safe, that even heroes, especially heroes, can be hollowed out and filled with something else without anyone noticing. And the question the show implicitly asks is, how would anyone know? How would anyone know if the things that seem trustworthy have already been corrupted? How would anyone know if the values relied upon have already been emptied out and replaced with something that looks the same but means the opposite? This is the paranoid dimension of nihilism. The suspicion that the foundations have already cracked, that the rot has already set in, that the Lich is already wearing Billy's face and no one has noticed yet. And the Lich speaks directly to Finn. He tells him that he is alone, that there is only darkness for him and only death for his people, that these ancients are just the beginning, that he will command a great and terrible army, and they will sail to 1 billion worlds, and they will sail until every light has been extinguished. And then the Lich says something that has stayed with viewers for over a decade, words that Ron Perlman delivers with such complete absence of emotion that they feel less like dialogue and more like a weather report from the end of time. He says, "You are strong, child, but I am beyond strength. I am the end, and I have come for you, Finn." There are a lot of things happening in that speech, but the most important one is easily missed. The Lich does not say he is stronger than Finn. He says he is beyond strength. This is not a boast. A boast would place the Lich within the same framework as Finn, just at a higher position on the scale. This is a category correction. The Lich is telling Finn, and by extension declaring, that the framework Finn uses to understand the world, strength versus weakness, good versus evil, hero versus villain, win versus lose, does not apply to him. He exists outside of it. He is not the opposite of Finn. He is the negation of the system that produced Finn. He is not the answer to a question. He is the claim that the question was never worth asking. A person can fight an enemy. No one can fight the claim that fighting itself is meaningless. And this is what separates the Lich from every other villain in animation, and arguably from every other villain in fiction. He is not Sauron, who wants a ring and the dominion it represents. He is not Voldemort, who fears death and seeks immortality. He is not Thanos, who has a twisted but internally consistent logic about resource management and population control. He is not the Joker, who wants to prove that chaos is the natural state of human psychology. He is not Darth Vader, who wants order and control. All of these villains want something. They have a vision of what the world should look like. They may be wrong about that vision, but they have one. The Lich has no vision. He has no plan beyond the plan of ending everything. He does not want to reshape the world according to his image. He wants to remove the world entirely. He wants to turn the picture off and leave the screen dark. He is, in the purest philosophical sense, a nihilist. Not because he believes in nothing, but because he believes nothing should exist. And this is what makes him terrifying to think about, really think about, in a way that most villains simply are not. Because most villains invite disagreement, and the disagreement is easy. The disagreement with Sauron is comfortable because no one wants a Dark Lord ruling the world. The disagreement with Voldemort is easy because no one wants a fascist wizard murdering children. These disagreements are comfortable. They do not challenge fundamental assumptions about reality. They take place within a shared framework of meaning. Both the audience and Sauron agree that the world is real and that power over it is valuable. The only disagreement is about who should have that power, but the Lich does not share that framework. He does not agree that the world is real in any sense that matters. He does not agree that power is valuable, or that anything is valuable, or that value itself is a coherent concept. To disagree with the Lich requires defending something much more basic than political preferences or moral intuitions. The proposition must be defended that existence is better than non-existence, and that honestly is harder than it sounds. Consider the question, why is existence better than non-existence? Not why do living beings prefer existence, that is a psychological question with a biological answer, but why in some objective, universal, non-personal sense is it better for things to exist than for things not to exist? The rock does not care whether it exists. The void does not suffer from being void. Non-existence is not painful. It is not anything at all. The preference for existence over non-existence is arguably just a bias built into living things by evolution. Things that prefer to exist survive. Things that do not prefer to exist do not survive. And so every living thing carries this preference, this assumption that being alive is good, not because it has been demonstrated, but because the things that did not carry this assumption are not around to argue the point. The Lich is the argument they would have made. And there is a meaningful difference between those two positions that the show explores with remarkable precision. The first position, believing in nothing, is what philosophers call passive nihilism. It is the shrug, the resignation, the sense that since nothing matters, one might as well do nothing. This is the nihilism of boredom, of depression, of the vague malaise that settles over a person who has stopped finding reasons to get out of bed. It is uncomfortable, but it is not dangerous. It is a philosophical cul-de-sac, a dead end that most people wander into at some point in their lives and eventually wander back out of. The second position, believing nothing should exist, is what philosophers call active nihilism. And it is infinitely more dangerous because it has a purpose. It takes the insight of passive nihilism, the recognition that life has no inherent meaning, and converts it into a project. If life has no meaning, then there is no reason for it to continue. And if there is no reason for it to continue, then perhaps the moral thing to do is to end it. This is the logic of the Lich. It is not the logic of someone who has given up. It is the logic of someone who has arrived at a conclusion and is acting on it with the discipline of a scientist and the conviction of a prophet. The Lich is not lazy. He is the most motivated character in the show. He just happens to be motivated by the total destruction of everything. This is a critical distinction that the show handles with sophistication that belies its time slot on a children's network. There is a difference between believing that life has no meaning and believing that life should not exist. The first is epistemological nihilism, a position about knowledge and value. The second is something closer to what philosophers might call anti-natalism taken to its cosmic extreme, the active position that existence is a mistake that must be corrected. The Lich occupies the second position. The show frames him as the embodiment of both. And this creates a philosophical tension that drives the entire series forward, because the characters of Adventure Time spend 10 seasons trying to find meaning in a world that the Lich insists has none. And the show never lets them win that argument. It only lets them keep having it. Because here is the thing about Adventure Time that most analyses of the show overlook. The land of Oo is a post-apocalyptic world. The Mushroom War, the nuclear conflict that destroyed human civilization roughly 1,000 years before the events of the show, is not just backstory. It is not just world building. It is the foundational trauma of the entire setting. Everything in U, the candy people, the mutated creatures, the warped geography, the magical systems that seem to have replaced scientific laws, the talking animals, the sentient objects, the kingdoms made of ice and fire and lumps of flesh, all of it exists because something terrible already happened. The world already ended, and life came back anyway. It came back wrong, arguably. It came back strange and unstable, and often absurd. But it came back. The land of U is what happens after nihilism wins its first battle. It is the world that grew in the crater. It is the flower that pushes through the crack in the concrete of a parking lot that no one will ever park in again. The mushroom bomb itself, the mutagenic weapon that ended human civilization, was dropped on a major city in North America sometime in the late 20th or early 21st century. The bomb resembled the Cold War-era Fat Man design, and it detonated in or above a subway station. Its blast radius was enormous, but its true destructive power was not nuclear alone. It was mutagenic. It did not just kill, it transformed. It warped the fabric of biological reality, turning normal organisms into the magical, distorted creatures that populate U. The candy people are not candy because someone decided to make candy people. They are candy because that is what the radiation did to them. The mutation is the magic. The fantasy is the fallout. And the Lich was born in that fallout. An unknown person caught near the detonation site was submerged in the mutagenic waste. And the essence of the Lich, which had been dormant on Earth for millions of years, found a body at last. The Lich, then, is not just a threat to U, he is a reminder that U should not exist. He is the original catastrophe trying to finish what it started. He is the bomb that keeps going off. The war that never ended. The end of the world that refuses to be relegated to the past. And the show makes this connection explicit through its mythology of the Catalyst Comets. The Catalyst Comets are a recurring element in the show's cosmology, revealed gradually across multiple seasons. A catalyst comet is a massive celestial object that strikes the Earth every 1,000 years. And each one carries with it an agent of change. Some comets bring creation, some bring destruction. In Season 6, Episode 43, The Comet, which aired June 5, 2015, the show reveals that both Finn and the Lich are past incarnations of the Catalyst Comet, the creative comet and the destructive comet, the soul that builds and the soul that raises. They have been arriving on Earth in alternating cycles for millions of years, each one undoing or building upon the work of the last. Finn is the current incarnation of the force that says yes to life. The Lich is the current incarnation of the force that says no. And this reframes the entire conflict of Adventure Time in cosmological terms. Finn is not fighting a bad guy. He is fighting the natural tendency of the universe toward disorder and decay. He is fighting entropy. He is fighting the second law of thermodynamics. He is fighting the physical reality that all organized systems tend toward disorganization, that all energy tends toward equilibrium, that all complexity tends toward simplicity, and that the ultimate simplicity is nothing at all. The Lich is not evil. He is physics. He is time. He is the fact that all things end. And Finn, with his sword and his boyish enthusiasm and his stubborn refusal to stop trying, is fighting time itself. This is a deeply uncomfortable idea for a children's show to present, and it is to Adventure Time's eternal credit that it does not flinch from it. The show could have made the Lich a conventional villain with conventional motivations. It could have given him a grudge, a plan, a desire for power, something that would make him comprehensible and therefore defeatable within the normal terms of a hero's journey. Instead, it made him something more honest and more frightening. It made him the logical endpoint of a question the show has been asking since its first episode. If the world has already ended once, if everything you see is built on ruins, if the candy people are mutations and the magic is radiation and the beauty of U is the beauty of something that grew in the wreckage of something else, then what is the argument against it ending again? What makes this particular arrangement of matter and energy worth preserving? What makes life, specifically, better than the absence of life? These are not questions the show answers. They are questions the Lich forces the show to ask. And the asking is what gives the show its soul. And you have to sit with that for a moment, because it changes everything about how this show works. This is a radical claim for a television show to make, especially one aimed at young audiences. Most shows aimed at children are built on the assumption that good triumphs over evil, that the hero wins, that the world is made safe. Adventure Time does not make this assumption. It makes a different one, a harder one, a braver one. It assumes that the world is never made safe, that the hero wins today and the threat returns tomorrow, that every victory is temporary and every peace is fragile, and every morning is borrowed time. And it presents this not as a grim truth to be endured, but as the condition that gives life its urgency and its beauty. If the world could be permanently saved, then saving it would be a task to be completed and forgotten. But the world cannot be permanently saved. It has to be saved every day, over and over, against threats that will never stop coming. And this perpetual saving, this never-ending responsibility to show up and do your best and protect the things you love, knowing that they will eventually be lost, is the show's definition of heroism. Not the slaying of the dragon, but the getting up the next morning to face whatever comes next. Every adventure Finn goes on, every kingdom he saves, every friend he protects, all of it is a temporary reprieve. The Lich is always out there, and even when he is defeated, imprisoned, transformed into a baby, reduced to a disembodied hand, he is never truly gone, because what he represents cannot be destroyed. Entropy can be sealed in amber for a while, trapped in the body of a child for a while, but it cannot be made to stop existing. It is woven into the structure of reality itself, and the best you can do, the absolute best you can do, is to keep building things in spite of it, to keep making meaning in a universe that will eventually unmake everything that has been made. The Season 4 finale and the Season 5 premiere together form a 3-episode arc that illustrates this point with devastating clarity. After the Lich opens the multiverse portal in The Lich, episodes 1 and 2 of Season 5, Finn the Human and Jake the Dog, both airing November 12, 2012, to an audience of approximately 3.435 million viewers, explore what happens next. The Lich arrives in the Time Room, a cosmic space that exists outside of normal reality, inhabited by a wish-granting entity named Prismo. Prismo is an unusual character, friendly, laid back, a being of immense power who behaves like a genial neighbor. His existence is sustained by the dream state of an old man sleeping on a couch. If the old man wakes up, Prismo disappears. He is, in other words, as fragile as everything else in the Adventure Time universe. Even cosmic wish granters are temporary. The Lich makes a wish. He does not hesitate. He does not negotiate. He does not ask for a modification of reality or a reshaping of the cosmic order. He wishes for the extinction of all life, not the extinction of all life on Earth, not the extinction of all life in one dimension, the extinction of all life everywhere, in every reality, across every timeline. All life. Gone. And the wish works. For a moment, there is nothing. The screen goes dark. Every living thing in every universe ceases to exist. The Lich achieves his goal. He gets what he wants. And what he wants is nothing. The void. Total cessation. The screen is empty. The silence is complete. There is a moment of silence after the wish takes effect that is worth examining closely. The screen is black. There is no sound, no music, no ambient noise, no narrator. Nothing. And this nothing lasts for a few seconds, which does not sound like much, but in the context of an 11-minute episode of a children's cartoon, a few seconds of absolute nothingness is an eternity. The show forces the audience to sit with the absence, forces an experience of, however briefly, what the Lich wants. And the experience is not dramatic. It is not terrifying. It is just empty. And that emptiness is, in its own way, worse than any monster or any threat or any cataclysm the show has ever depicted. Because monsters can be fought. Threats can be countered. Cataclysms can be survived. But emptiness cannot be anything. It is the final state. It is the state after which no other state is possible. And the show makes it felt in the chest, in the back of the throat, in the place where the body knows something is wrong before the mind can articulate what. This is, in narrative terms, the ultimate expression of nihilism. The philosophical endpoint that Nietzsche warned about made literal and made visual. And the fact that it happens, even briefly, even in a show that will obviously find a way to undo it, matters enormously. Because it means the show is willing to take the Lich's position seriously. It is willing to show what the world looks like if nihilism wins. And what it looks like is nothing. Not darkness, not destruction, not even death. Just absence. The cessation of the picture. The end of the story. The moment when the storyteller stops talking and there is no one left to listen. The wish is eventually undone through a complex mechanism involving Finn's counter-wish, which creates the alternate farm world timeline, and Jake's subsequent wish, which restores the prime timeline. But the experience leaves a mark on the show that never fully heals. From this point forward, Adventure Time knows that the Lich can win. The show has seen its own ending. It has experienced the void, however briefly, and the memory of that void colors everything that follows. The adventures continue, but there is a weight to them now, a consciousness of fragility that was not there before. The cotton candy world of Ooh, with its singing birds and its dancing flames, and its friendly kingdoms, suddenly feels less safe. Not because anything within it has changed, but because you have seen what nothing looks like, and you cannot unsee it. This is also where the show reveals the true horror of the farm world, the alternate timeline created by Finn's wish. In Farm World, the mushroom bomb never detonated because Simon Petrikov, who would have become the Ice King, used the ice crown to freeze the bomb before it could explode. He died in the process, sacrificing himself to prevent the apocalypse. And in this reality, because the bomb never went off, there is no magic, no candy people, no stretchy dogs, no land of ooh. Just a normal, mundane pre-war world that continued existing without interruption. And it might seem like that would be better. It might seem like a world without the Mushroom War, without mutation, without the Lich, would be a happier place. But the show challenges this assumption in ways that are deeply uncomfortable. Because Farm World Finn, the version of Finn who grew up in this unmutated reality, eventually disturbs the frozen bomb. He steals the ice crown from its resting place, and the bomb, which has been dormant for centuries, detonates at last. And Farm World Jake, Finn's dog in this timeline, is possessed by the Lich. The same force of nihilism and destruction. Because the Lich was not created by the bomb. The Lich existed before the bomb. The bomb was merely the vehicle through which the Lich entered physical reality. Remove the bomb and the Lich is still there waiting, latent in the fabric of the universe, needing only a new catalyst to manifest. This is the show demonstrating that nihilism is not a product of specific historical circumstances. It is not caused by war or trauma or nuclear radiation. It is a feature of existence itself. You cannot create a world so safe, so stable, so carefully protected from catastrophe that nihilism does not find a way in. The void does not need an invitation. It is already inside the house. The Farm World timeline persists even after the Prime timeline is restored, existing as a parallel reality that continues to produce consequences for the main storyline. The Farm World Lich, manifesting through a possessed Farm World Jake, becomes a recurring threat. His hand, severed during the events of the Season 7 episode crossover, falls through a portal that connects to every reality, duplicating and spreading through dimensions like a virus. This is the show's metaphor for how nihilism propagates. It does not need to be sought out. It finds a way. It crosses boundaries. It shows up in dimensions seemed safe. A single hand, a fragment of the original, is enough. Because nihilism does not need its full form to be dangerous. A whisper is enough. A doubt is enough. A single moment of wondering whether any of it matters, that is enough for the hand to find purchase, to grip the edge of consciousness, and to begin pulling. This is where the Lich begins to function as something more than a character. He becomes a structural element of the show itself. His presence, even when he is off-screen, even when he is not mentioned, even when the episode is a lighthearted standalone about BMO learning to cook, or Lumpy Space Princess causing problems at a party, shapes the emotional architecture of Adventure Time. Every moment of joy in the series carries an implicit counterpoint. This could all end. Every friendship, every act of kindness, every sunset over the grasslands, every game of Card Wars, every awkward conversation between Finn and a girl he likes, all of it exists in the shadow of a being who wants to extinguish it. And this tension between the warmth of the world and the cold of the void, between the comedy on the surface and the horror underneath, is what gives Adventure Time its depth. It is what separates the show from its contemporaries. It is what makes it endure in the minds of the people who watched it, long after the plot details have faded. The philosopher Albert Camus, writing in The Myth of Sisyphus in 1942, argued that the fundamental philosophical question is whether life is worth living. Not in the emotional sense, not as a cry for help, but as a genuine intellectual inquiry. If the universe is indifferent to your existence, if there is no God, no afterlife, no cosmic plan, no grand design that gives suffering a purpose, then why continue? Why get out of bed? Why eat breakfast? Why do anything at all? Camus called this confrontation the absurd, the gap between the human need for meaning and the universe's stubborn refusal to provide it. The universe does not care about anyone. It does not know any passing. And yet, the human heart needs it to care, needs it to know a name, needs life to matter. And the collision between that need and the universe's indifference, that collision is the absurd. Camus' answer to the absurd was not despair. It was not suicide, which he considered a surrender. It was not religion, which he considered a dodge. His answer was revolt. Keep going, push the boulder up the hill, knowing it will roll back down. And imagine Sisyphus happy, not because the task has meaning, but because the act of continuing in the face of meaninglessness is itself the only meaning available. Not because the top will be reached of the hill, but because the pushing is the point. Adventure Time is, in its totality, a Camusian project, and the Lich is its Sisyphean boulder. Because the show does not defeat the Lich by proving him wrong. It cannot. The Lich's position, that existence is ultimately purposeless. that the universe tends toward entropy, that all things end, that meaning is a construction rather than a discovery, is never refuted by the narrative. No character ever stands up and delivers a speech that logically dismantles nihilism. No god descends from a cloud to announce that life has a purpose. No cosmic revelation redeems the suffering of the characters or justifies the existence of the world. The show does not provide answers. It provides persistence. The characters keep living. They keep going on adventures. They keep making friends and losing them and making them again. They keep building things that will crumble and rebuilding them after they crumble. They keep telling jokes in the shadow of annihilation. And the show presents this persistence not as naivety, not as ignorance of the Lich's argument, but as the only sane response to the abyss. You cannot argue with the void, but you can refuse to step into it. You cannot prove that life has meaning, but you can live as though it does and see what happens. And this is where the show's relationship with its own medium becomes relevant, because Adventure Time is not just telling a story about the Lich, it is, on a structural level, performing its argument against him. Every episode that airs is an act of creation. Every script that is written, every frame that is animated, every voice that is recorded, every piece of music that is composed, is a small, temporary, impermanent act of meaning-making in a universe that offers no guarantee that any of it matters. The show itself is a boulder being pushed up a hill. It will end. It did end on September 3rd, 2018, after 283 episodes, and then it came back in the form of Distant Lands and then Fiona and Cake. The story kept being told. The boulder kept being pushed, and this is not a metaphor for the show. It is the show. Every animated series is, in some sense, a revolt against nihilism. Every creative act is every time a person sits down and makes something, a song, a painting, a script, a cake, a garden, a conversation, a friendship, they are saying, implicitly and sometimes explicitly, that the Lich is not the final word, that the void is real, but it is not the only thing that is real, that meaning can be made even if it cannot be found. And Adventure Time, across its entire run, makes this argument not through its dialogue, but through its existence. The show is the argument. The fact that it was made at all, the fact that hundreds of artists spent years of their lives creating a world of candy people and stretchy dogs and sentient video game consoles, the fact that they poured genuine artistry and genuine emotion into a cartoon that aired on Cartoon Network between ads for cereal and action figures, the fact that they did all of this knowing that it would end, that the show would be cancelled, that the audience would grow up and move on, that the cultural moment would pass, and they did it anyway, with care and with craft and with love. That is the answer to the Lich. Not the words the characters speak, but the fact that the characters exist at all. The fact that someone, many someones, chose to bring them into being. The fact that creation happened against all odds and against all logic and against the second law of thermodynamics, and it was good. And this is also where the show distinguishes itself from other narratives that deal with nihilism and existentialism. Most stories that engage with these themes do so from a position of sophistication and distance. They are adult dramas, literary novels, philosophical treatises. They assume an audience that has already encountered these ideas in an academic context. Adventure Time does none of this. It presents nihilism to an audience that may never have heard the word. It introduces existential philosophy to viewers who are watching between episodes of regular show and Steven Universe. And it does this not by simplifying the ideas, but by embodying them. It does not lecture about the absurd. It shows a boy fighting a skeleton in a candy kingdom and trusts the audience to feel the weight of what is underneath. It does not explain Camus. It is Camus, translated from French philosophy into American animation, losing nothing in the translation. This is an achievement that deserves more recognition than it typically receives. Adventure Time is often praised for its creativity, its humor, its emotional depth, its willingness to experiment with form and genre. But it is less frequently praised for what is arguably its most significant accomplishment: the fact that it made genuine philosophical inquiry accessible to a mass audience without dumbing it down. The Lich is not a simplified version of nihilism. He is nihilism, fully realized, presented in a medium that most people associate with entertainment rather than education. And the fact that millions of viewers, many of them young, encountered the Lich and thought about what he represents, thought about the void and the end and the question of whether life has meaning, and thought about these things not because a teacher assigned them Nietzsche, but because a cartoon skeleton said something that made them feel a cold weight in their chest. That is cultural work of the highest order. That is philosophy doing what philosophy has always been meant to do. Not sitting in a university, but walking through the world, wearing a crown of horns, speaking in a voice like the end of everything. And this brings us to a question about the medium itself that is worth spending a moment on. Why does this work? Why does a cartoon about a boy and his dog manage to say something meaningful about nihilism that a philosophy textbook cannot? The answer that the show demonstrates, without ever stating explicitly, is that philosophy is not just about ideas. It is about experience. A person can read Nietzsche's The Gay Science and understand intellectually what he means when he says God is dead. But understanding it intellectually is not the same as feeling it. The Lich makes it felt. Watching him peel back Billy's face and reveal the skeleton underneath, the mind does not process epistemological nihilism. Something cold moves through the stomach. Hearing Ron Perlman's voice, stripped of all humanity, declare that he is the end, the philosophical implications do not register. The sound registers. The vibration. The weight of a voice that does not care about anyone. And this feeling, this gut-level, pre-intellectual, animal feeling of being in the presence of something that does not acknowledge any existence, is closer to the actual experience of nihilism than any philosophical argument could ever be. The Lich does not explain nihilism, he is nihilism. And being in his presence, even through the mediation of a television screen, even in the safe context of a cartoon, is the closest most people will ever come to understanding what Nietzsche was actually afraid of. The show also positions the Lich within the broader context of Adventure Time's Rogues Gallery in ways that illuminate his unique philosophical function. Consider the difference between the Lich and the other recurring antagonists across the series. Hunsan Abadir, the ruler of the Nightosphere and Marceline's father, is a being of immense destructive power. He can devour souls. He commands the forces of chaos. And yet he is domesticated by the show into a figure of dark comedy. A deadbeat dad who misses his daughter's concerts and does not understand her music. His evil is rendered familiar, almost cozy. He is not the Void. He is the uncle who tells inappropriate jokes at Thanksgiving. Similarly, Flame Princess's father, the Flame King, is a tyrant and a manipulator. But his tyranny is political, comprehensible, the kind of power-grabbing that can be seen in any newspaper or history book. He wants control. He wants his kingdom to be strong. His evil has goals and strategies and vulnerabilities. He can be understood, and because he can be understood, he can be resisted. The Lich has none of these qualities that make villains manageable. He cannot be understood, because there is nothing to understand. He cannot be negotiated with, because negotiation requires two parties who want something, and the Lich's want is the absence of all wants. He cannot be reasoned with, because reason requires a shared framework of logic, and the Lich's logic leads to a conclusion that invalidates logic itself. If nothing should exist, then logic, which is a thing that exists, should not exist either. The Lich's philosophy is, in the most literal sense, self-defeating. It uses existence to argue against existence. It uses language to argue that language is meaningless. It uses consciousness to argue that consciousness should end. And the fact that the Lich does not notice this contradiction, or does not care about it, is itself the most damning criticism the show levels against pure nihilism. It is a philosophy that cannot survive its own scrutiny. It is a fire that wants to burn itself. There is another way to think about the Lich's relationship to the show's other characters, and it involves looking at who the Lich is not, because the Lich is defined as much by his absences as by his presences. He is not funny. In a show built on humor, where even the darkest episodes contain jokes, the Lich has never been the subject of comedy. He has never been played for laughs. He has never been put in a silly situation, or given a humanizing moment, or caught doing something embarrassing. Every other villain in the show has been given this treatment. The Ice King is a comedy character for most of the series, his tragedy revealed slowly underneath the humor. Lemongrab's screaming rages are simultaneously horrifying and hilarious. The King of Oo is a fraud and a fool. Even Hunsan Abadir, the Lord of Evil, has domestic comedy with his daughter. But the show never lets the audience laugh at the Lich. And this restraint is a storytelling decision of enormous importance, because humor humanizes. When the audience laughs at something, the thing is brought into the circle of the comprehensible. It becomes approachable. It becomes manageable. By refusing to let the audience laugh at the Lich, the show keeps him outside that circle. He remains incomprehensible. He remains other. And this otherness is what gives him his philosophical weight. He is the one thing in the show that cannot be domesticated by the show's tone. He is also not tragic, and this is perhaps even more important, because Adventure Time is a show that excels at tragedy. Simon Petrikov's descent into madness is tragic. Marceline's 1,000 years of loneliness are tragic. Finn's loss of his arm, his discovery of his father's indifference, his failed romances, these are all tinged with genuine pathos. The show knows how to make you feel for its characters, but it does not try to make you feel for the Lich. There is no backstory that explains his behavior. There is no wound that produced his nihilism. There is no moment in his past where he was hurt, and this hurt made him what he is. He simply is what he is. And the show's refusal to give him a sympathetic origin story is, in itself, a philosophical statement, because it means that nihilism, as the show understands it, is not a response to trauma. It is not something caused by specific experiences. It is a permanent feature of the universe that exists independent of individual experience. Nihilism does not arise because something bad happened. Something bad happening merely reveals the nihilism that was already there, built into the structure of reality, waiting to be noticed. This is a subtle but critical distinction, and it separates Adventure Time from most other shows that deal with dark themes. In most narratives, evil has a cause. The villain was abused as a child. The monster was created by hubris. The antagonist turned bad because society failed them. These origin stories are comforting because they imply that evil is preventable. Fix the cause and the effect is fixed. Heal the wound and the monster is healed. But the Lich has no wound. There is no cause to fix. He is not a symptom. He is a condition, and conditions cannot be cured. They can only be managed. This is also why the Lich is the perfect villain for a sleep essay, because nihilism is the thought that visits in the dark. It is the 3 a.m. question that has no answer. It is the voice that asks, in the stillness of a bedroom ceiling, what is the point of any of this? And in the daylight, the question can be answered. The reasons for living can be listed. Family, friends, work, passions, morning coffee, the dog, the way the light comes through the window at a certain hour. But at 3 a.m., in the dark, when none of those things are visible, when they are all just memories and promises, the question becomes harder. And the Lich lives in that difficulty. He is the 3 a.m. version of every question successfully answered during the day. He is the dark corollary to every bright truth. And the show's genius is in recognizing that he cannot be banished permanently. He can only be managed. He can only be put to sleep by choosing to close the eyes and trust that morning will come. And here is where the show does something structurally brilliant that most viewers do not consciously notice but feel instinctively. After the 3-episode arc of the Lich, Finn the human, and Jake the dog, the show does not immediately follow up on the Lich's story. It goes back to episodic adventures. Finn and Jake go back to their treehouse. They hang out with BMO. They visit Marceline. They have small, silly, inconsequential adventures that have nothing to do with cosmic nihilism or the extinction of all life. And this is not a failure of continuity. It is a statement. It is the show demonstrating what life looks like after you have glimpsed the void. The characters go home, they make breakfast, they talk to their friends about nothing, they watch the sunset. The ordinary, the mundane, the everyday is still there, still functioning, still capable of producing moments of genuine pleasure and connection and meaning. Despite the knowledge, on some deep level, that all of it is temporary. The show returns to normalcy not because it has forgotten the Lich, but because normalcy is the answer to the Lich. The everyday is the rebellion. The mundane is the revolution. The act of caring about small things in a universe that is indifferent to big things is the most radical philosophical position the show takes. And it takes it not by saying it, but by doing it, episode after episode, season after season, until the sheer accumulation of small, ordinary, beautiful moments becomes an argument that no philosophy of negation can overcome. The Lich's next major arc comes in Season 6, Episodes 1 and 2, Wake Up and Escape from the Citadel, which aired together on April 21, 2014. These episodes form the Season's 6th premiere, promoted as a special half-hour event. In Wake Up, Finn and Jake travel to the Cosmic Time Room seeking information about Finn's biological father, who has been revealed to be a prisoner in the Crystal Citadel, an interstellar prison housing the most dangerous criminals in the universe. But the Lich arrives at the time room first, and he does something that demonstrates his essential nature more clearly than any speech. He kills Prismo, not by fighting him, not by overpowering him, but by waking up the old man whose dream sustains Prismo's existence. This act is one of the most quietly devastating moments in the series, and it is easy to overlook because it does not involve a fight or a chase or a dramatic confrontation. It is just a hand reaching out, touching a sleeping man's shoulder, a gentle shake, a whisper, "Wake up." That is all it takes, and the most powerful being in the room ceases to exist. There is something almost meditative about the simplicity of it. The Lich does not need a weapon to unmake a god. He needs patience, proximity, and an understanding of how fragile the foundations of reality actually are. Consider what this means. Prismo is a wish-granting entity of near-limitless power. He exists in a dimension beyond normal reality. He is, in the cosmology of the show, something like a god, and the Lich defeats him by waking up a sleeping person, by ending a dream. The symbolism is unmistakable. The Lich does not fight power with greater power. He reveals that power is based on something fragile, something that can be undone simply by introducing consciousness to a comfortable illusion. Prismo exists because someone is dreaming. The Lich wakes the dreamer, and the dream ends. This is not a battle. It is an ontological argument. The Lich is saying, look at the foundation of this reality. It is a sleeping man on a couch, and I can shake him awake. The murder of Prismo releases the Citadel's prisoners and leads Finn and Jake to the Crystal Citadel itself, where Finn meets his father, Martin Mertens. And Martin turns out to be a deeply disappointing person. Not evil, not a villain, just selfish, cowardly, and indifferent. He abandoned Finn as a baby and shows no remorse when confronted about it. He is, in his own small way, a nihilist. Not the cosmic kind, like the Lich. The personal kind. The kind who does not believe that other people's feelings are real enough to take seriously. The kind who uses people and walks away and does not look back. Martin is the Lich writ small, nihilism at the scale of a single human relationship. A man who has decided that caring about other people is not worth the effort, that bonds are just constraints, that freedom from responsibility is the only real freedom. And the fact that Martin is not presented as a monster, that he is presented as a recognizable type of person, someone you might know, someone whose voice sounds like a voice from your own life, makes him in some ways more devastating than the Lich himself. His presence in these episodes creates a devastating resonance. Finn sought his father hoping for meaning, for connection, for the answer to the question of who he is. And what he found was someone who does not care. The Lich in these episodes is not even the biggest source of nihilism in Finn's life. His own father is. In Escape from the Citadel, something remarkable happens. The Citadel Guardians, massive cosmic beings tasked with maintaining the prison, bleed a healing substance when wounded during the chaos of the escape. This substance, a white viscous liquid, is splashed onto the Lich, and it does not destroy him. It does not purify him. It transforms him. The healing blood causes the Lich to grow fresh organs, fresh skin, fresh tissue. Layers of new biology accumulate over the ancient skeleton. The green fire in his eye sockets is extinguished. The horns are buried under folds of new flesh. And what emerges from the transformation is a giant baby, naked, mewling, with enormous eyes and chubby limbs and no apparent memory of who or what he was. It is one of the most visually striking transformations in the history of the show. The animators render it in real time, showing the skeleton being slowly buried under layers of growing tissue, the horns retracting, the jaw softening, the empty eye sockets filling with living matter. It is grotesque and beautiful simultaneously, like watching a time-lapse of decomposition played in reverse. And the metaphor is unmissable. This is what healing looks like when applied to the ultimate wound. Not a return to a previous state. Not a restoration of something that was lost, but the growth of something entirely new over something entirely old. The bones of the Lich are still there, underneath. The skeleton has not been removed. It has been covered, built upon, enclosed within new flesh the way a scar encloses a wound, not erasing the injury but incorporating it into a new wholeness. He is found by Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig, two of the show's most gentle and domesticated characters. Tree Trunks is a tiny elephant who bakes apple pies and speaks in a slow southern drawl. Mr. Pig is a pig who loves her. They are the most harmless beings in Ooh, the antithesis of everything the Lich represents. And they adopt him. They name him Sweet Pig Trunks, or Sweet Pea for short, and they raise him as their child. This is, without exaggeration, one of the most philosophically sophisticated narrative decisions in the history of animated television. The show takes the embodiment of nihilism, the purest expression of the desire for universal annihilation, and transforms him into a baby, not by defeating him, not by overpowering him, not by proving his philosophy wrong, by healing him. The Lich is not killed. He is given life. The void is filled not with an argument, but with a body, with vulnerability, with need, with the need to be fed and held and loved and taught to walk and speak and exist in a world that the Lich's own philosophy says should not exist. And the question the show asks from this point forward is genuinely profound. Is the Lich gone, or is he just sleeping? Is nihilism something that can be healed, or is it something that merely hibernates, waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge? Can a good person be raised on top of a buried monster? Can a life be built on top of the void and trust the floor to hold? Because the answer, as the show makes clear in multiple subsequent episodes, is that the Lich is not gone. He is inside Sweet Pea. He is dormant, suppressed, buried beneath layers of new tissue and new memory and new identity. But he is there. He is always there, waiting, listening. The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The idea is that the breaks are not something to be hidden or ashamed of. They are part of the object's history. They make it more beautiful, not less. They tell a story. Sweet Pea is kintsugi on a cosmic scale. He is a broken thing, the most fundamentally broken thing in the show's entire universe, repaired with the golden seams of new life, new flesh, new identity. And the show asks the viewer to see the beauty in this repair, even knowing that the breaks are still there underneath, even knowing that the gold might not hold forever. And this creates one of the most unsettling metaphors in the entire series. Sweet Pea is a child who carries annihilation inside him. He is innocence built on top of oblivion. He is the post-apocalyptic world of Ooh in miniature, something new and alive and hopeful, grown over the remains of something terrible. And the fact that he does not know what he carries makes it worse, because ignorance is not the same as safety. Unawareness of the Lich inside does not mean the Lich is absent. Season 6, Episode 26, Gold Stars, aired January 29, 2015, storyboarded by Seo Kim and Somvalai Zayaphone, brings this metaphor to the surface in one of the show's most memorable and disturbing scenes. Sweet Pea, now a giant toddler attending school in the Candy Kingdom, encounters the King of Ooh and Toronto, two minor conmen who manipulate him into performing as a distraction while they rob people. They reward him with Gold Star stickers. He brings the stickers home. His parents hang them on the refrigerator. It is a painfully sweet detail, and the show lets the viewer sit with it, feel the warmth of this normal childhood moment before it destroys it. Because the con men push too far. When Sweet Pea discovers their deception and confronts them, they threaten him. The King of Ooh holds a torch and threatens to burn down his family's orchard. And the flames trigger something. Sweet Pea's eyes darken. His posture changes. His voice drops from the high register of a child to the bottomless register of Ron Perlman. And the Lich speaks. He tells the King of Ooh and Toronto to stop. He thanks them for what they have taught him. And he says it is now time for their education. He tells them that before there was time, before there was anything, there was nothing. And before there was nothing, there were monsters. He shows them a vision of those monsters, a writhing mass of primordial entities that predate existence itself. And then he says, with perfect and terrible calm, the line that gives the episode its name, "Here is your gold star." The scene works on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it is a moment of catharsis. The bullies get what they deserve. The child stands up for himself. But beneath that surface, it is something far more disturbing. Because the Lich is not protecting Sweet Pea. The Lich does not protect anything. The Lich does not value Sweet Pea's life or his family or his orchard. The Lich is using Sweet Pea's emotional distress as a doorway back into consciousness. The child's pain, his fear, his anger. These are the cracks through which the Lich seeps back into the world. And this suggests something deeply unsettling about the nature of nihilism as the show understands it. Nihilism does not attack from outside. It emerges from within. It comes not from the absence of feeling, but from the overwhelming presence of feeling. When love and safety and meaning are threatened, when the structures that give life value are damaged, the void opens up. When the hurt is deep enough, the Lich wakes. This is not a new observation in philosophical terms. Nietzsche himself argued that nihilism was not an external force, but an internal collapse. It was what happened when the values a culture relied upon ceased to be convincing, when the story stopped working, when the promises turned out to be empty, when the father who was supposed to love his child turned out to be a coward who abandoned an infant on a raft in the ocean. Nihilism, for Nietzsche, was a pathological transitional stage between stable value systems. It was the gap between the old god dying and the new one being born. And in that gap, anything could happen. Anything could walk through the door, including the worst version of yourself. Nietzsche's solution was the creation of new values. The Übermensch, the Overman, the figure who could generate meaning from within, rather than receiving it from above. The person who did not need a god to tell them that life was worth living. The person who looked at the void, understood it fully, accepted that it was real, and then turned away from it to create something that had never existed before. Not because creation was justified by some cosmic principle, but because creation was what they chose. Because will, for Nietzsche, was the engine that could drive a person through the desert of meaninglessness and out the other side. But Nietzsche was honest enough to admit that most people would not become the Übermensch. Most people, when their values collapsed, would simply collapse with them. Most people, when they stared into the void, would not turn away. They would fall in. And the Lich is what waits at the bottom of that fall. He is the thing that greets you when you arrive at the place where nothing means anything. And he does not greet you with sympathy. He greets you with confirmation. Yes, he says, you are right. Nothing matters. And now here is what that looks like. Sweet Pea is the show's Ubermensch in training. He is the being who must create his own identity, his own values, his own reasons for existing, all while carrying the voice of annihilation inside his head. He does not have a template for how to be good. He was not born good. He was born as the Lich. He was literally, physically, biologically, the embodiment of universal destruction given new flesh by an accident of cosmic healing. Everything he is, every act of kindness, every moment of joy, every gold star on the refrigerator, is something he has built on top of the void. And the void is always there, underneath, whispering. And the show never simplifies this into a binary. Sweet Pea is not presented as either the Lich or not the Lich. He is both and neither. He is a new thing made from an old thing. And the old thing is still in there, like the foundation of a house that has been rebuilt from the ground up. The foundation is invisible. No one thinks about the foundation while living in the house, cooking dinner, watching television, reading a book. But the foundation is there. It is what the house stands on. And if the foundation cracks, the house falls. Sweet Pea's entire life is an exercise in trusting a foundation that he knows, on some level, is made of something terrible. And the show asks the audience to root for him, to hope that the foundation holds, to believe that a life built on top of annihilation can still be a good life, a meaningful life, a life worth living. And you do. You root for him because he is trying so hard, because he is so gentle and so confused and so determined to be good despite having no instruction manual for goodness and no guarantee that his goodness is real and not just a temporary reprieve before the Lich resurfaces and takes back what was always his. The show treats this with remarkable seriousness. Sweet Pea does not have an easy journey. He is haunted by dreams he does not understand. He senses, without knowing why, that something terrible lives inside him. He is a child raised by loving parents in a supportive community, and yet there is a part of him that will never be safe because it is the part that wants everything to end. He is, in other words, a person, because that is what the Lich metaphor ultimately reduces to. Every human being carries the capacity for nihilism. Every person at some point in their life stares into the void and feels it stare back. Every person at some point hears the whisper that says, "None of this matters." The question is not whether the Lich exists inside you. The question is whether you let him speak. The episode Whispers, which aired July 20th, 2017, listed as the 13th episode of the 9th season in production, numbering though originally planned as a late season 8 episode, brings this internal conflict to its climax. In this episode, the farm world Lich's Hand, a remnant from the alternate timeline created by Finn's wish to Prismo, which crossed into the main timeline during the events of the season 7 episode, Crossover aired January 28th. 2016 has found its way to Sweet Pea. The hand, disembodied and animate, whispers to Sweet Pea at night. It tells him he is terrible. It tells him he is the Lich. It is the voice of his buried nature calling to him from across timelines, trying to pull him back to what he was. And Sweet Pea, after struggling with these whispers, after nights of tears and confusion, and the terrible suspicion that the whispers might be right, does something the show has been building toward for 3 full seasons. He rejects them. He says he is not going to be a part of the Lich. And he destroys the hand, physically, with his own massive fists. He crushes the thing that was trying to define him and tosses it aside. And in that moment, a toddler does what no hero in the entire show has ever done. He does not defeat the Lich through force, though force is involved. He defeats the Lich through self-definition. He says, "I know what lives inside me. I know what I was. I know what the whispers are telling me. And I choose to be something else. Not because I have proof that the whispers are wrong, not because someone has given me a logical argument against nihilism, but because I am standing here, alive, in a body that used to be a monster, and I am choosing not to be a monster." That is enough. That has to be enough. There is something worth dwelling on here about the mechanics of how the show stages this rejection, because the staging matters as much as the content. Sweet Pea does not reject the Lich in a moment of strength. He rejects the Lich in a moment of fear. He is crying when the episode begins. He is running through the woods in tears. He is a frightened child who has been hearing a voice at night that tells him he is terrible. And it is from this place of vulnerability, not from a place of power, that he makes his choice. This is crucial, because it means the show is saying that strength is not needed to resist nihilism, Bravery is not needed. There is no need for a philosophical framework or a religious faith or a comprehensive theory of meaning. A person just needs to be standing there, afraid and confused and uncertain, and to say no. Not no as a shout of defiance, not no as a battle cry, just no as a quiet, personal, undramatic refusal to become the thing that is trying to take over. The most powerful word in the show is not spoken by a hero with a sword. It is spoken by a crying child in the woods. And this is the show at its most honest and its most compassionate. Finn notably does not save Sweet Pea in this episode. Finn is present, Finn is watching, Finn is ready to intervene if needed. But the show does not let him. Because this is not Finn's fight. This is Sweet Pea's fight, and it has to be won by Sweet Pea alone. From the inside, or it is not really one at all. No one can save another person from nihilism. No one can argue another person out of the void. No one can give someone else a reason to live. The finding has to happen from the inside. The reaching has to be done with shaking hands, even if those hands once belonged to a monster. And when Sweet Pea reaches, when he grabs the farm world Lich's hand and crushes it, he is not destroying an external enemy. He is asserting ownership of his own story. He is saying, this body is mine now. This life is mine now. Whatever I used to be, I am not that anymore. And nobody gets to tell me otherwise. Not a Lich, not a hand, not a whisper. This is, in philosophical terms, an act of radical authenticity. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist who published Being and Nothingness in 1943, argued that existence precedes essence. By this he meant that a person is not born with a fixed nature, not assigned a purpose at the factory, not given a script to follow. A person is thrown into existence first, and must create their nature, through their choices, their actions, their commitments. A person is not what they were born as, not what was done to them, not what circumstances dictate. A person is what they do. A person is the choices they make freely and without excuse in the face of a world that provides no guidance and accepts no excuses. Sweet Pea was born as the Lich. He was literally, physically, the Lich given new flesh, and he chose not to be. He looked at the deepest, most destructive truth about himself and said, that is not who I am. Not because it was not true. It was true. He was the Lich. But because truth is not the same as destiny. Knowing what something is not the same as accepting it. And if the Lich is nihilism, then Sweet Pea's rejection of the Lich is the show's answer to nihilism. It is not a logical refutation, it is not a philosophical argument that can be written on a chalkboard and defended in a seminar. It is a choice. It is the choice to continue existing, to continue building meaning, to continue being alive, even when part of the self wants to stop. Even when the voice in the dark says stopping is the honest thing to do. Even when the voice might be right. The choice is made regardless. And in the philosophy of Adventure Time, choosing is enough. Not because choosing is rational, but because it is yours. And this is where the show's treatment of the Lich intersects with something deeply personal for anyone who has ever struggled with their own sense of identity. Because Sweet Pea's story is not really about a cartoon character. It is about the experience of discovering an inherited something placed inside before any say in the matter, and deciding what to do about it. This could be a family history of addiction. It could be a genetic predisposition toward depression. It could be a pattern of behavior learned from a parent who learned it from their parent who learned it from theirs. It could be the simple, unavoidable fact of being born into a world that was not designed and that operates according to rules were not agreed to. Sweet Pea did not choose to be the Lich. He did not choose to carry annihilation inside him, but he did choose what to do with that inheritance. He chose to be kind. He chose to go to school. He chose to love his parents and bring home gold stars and be a good person, even though the foundation of his being was the opposite of goodness. And this choice, made daily, made continuously, made without guarantee of success, is the most human thing in the entire show. More human than any of the actual humans. Because this is what being human is. It is choosing who to be over and over every day in full knowledge that the choice might not stick, that the old patterns might reassert themselves, that the Lich inside might wake up one night and try to take back what he lost. The show does not promise that Sweet Pea will always succeed. It does not promise that the Lich will never resurface. It does not provide the comfort of a permanent victory. What it provides instead is something more honest and ultimately more helpful. It provides the example of someone trying, someone getting up each morning and choosing again to be the person they want to be rather than the person they were made to be. And the show suggests, with a gentleness that is almost heartbreaking, that the trying is enough, not because it guarantees success, but because it is the only option that does not involve surrender. There is a reading of Sweet Pea's arc that connects it to the broader psychological literature on inherited trauma. The idea that the trauma of one generation can be passed down to the next through mechanisms that are not fully understood. That children can carry the weight of catastrophes they did not experience. That the past lives inside the present, whether the present knows it or not. Sweet Pea literally carries the Lich within him. He is a child born from apocalypse, raised in a world built on the ruins of a previous one, carrying inside his body the very force that ended that previous world. And the show suggests, through its treatment of his character, that the path forward is not to deny this inheritance, but to acknowledge it. Sweet Pea does not pretend the Lich does not exist. He does not suppress the whispers by ignoring them. He faces them. He listens to what the voice is saying. And then he decides that the voice does not define him. The trauma is real. The inheritance is real. The capacity for destruction is real. But it is not the whole story. And insisting that it is the whole story, insisting that because carrying darkness means being darkness, that is the Lich's argument. And Sweet Pea rejects it. This connects to something that the writer and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl described in his 1946 book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl, who survived Auschwitz, argued that even in the most extreme conditions of suffering and degradation, a human being retains the ability to choose their attitude toward their circumstances. The last of the human freedoms, he wrote, is the ability to choose one's response. Everything else can be taken: possessions, health, dignity, family, name. But no one can take the choice of how one faces what is happening. And Sweet Pea, in his small, gentle, quiet way, exercises this freedom. He chooses, not from a position of strength or wisdom or philosophical training, just from the bare, irreducible fact of being alive and having a will of his own. And that, the show argues, is sufficient. But the Lich is not only a metaphor for personal nihilism. He is also, and perhaps more importantly, a commentary on the nature of endings themselves. And this is the dimension of the character that deserves the most attention, because it is the dimension that connects most directly to the experience of lying in the dark, listening to this, thinking about what it means for things to stop. Adventure Time is a show obsessed with endings. It takes place after one ending, the Mushroom War. It builds toward another, the series finale. And between those two poles, it is constantly ending things. Relationships end, Finn and Flame Princess break up, Finn and Princess Bubblegum's romantic feelings are never reciprocated. Kingdoms fall. The Candy Kingdom is overthrown, temporarily, by the King of Ooh. Characters change so fundamentally that they become unrecognizable. Finn loses an arm. Princess Bubblegum loses her kingdom and lives as a vagabond. The Ice King, who was once a man named Simon Petrikov, a kind and intelligent antiquarian who studied Scandinavian artifacts, loses his mind to a magical crown and spends centuries as a pathetic, deluded ice wizard who does not remember who he was. Everything in this show is subject to entropy, to decay, to the slow dismantling that time performs on all things. And the Lich is the personification of that process. He is not a character who causes entropy. He is the arrow of time pointing in one direction. He is the glass that cannot unbreak, the ice cream that cannot unmelt, the person who cannot undo the things they have done or undo the things that have been done to them. He is the physical law that says things fall apart. And the fact that the show gives this law a face and a voice and a name does not make it less true. It makes it more visible. Consider what this means personally, right now, listening to this in the dark. Every moment ever lived is behind, unreachable, unrecoverable. Every version of a person that has ever been, the child, the teenager, the person from last week, is gone. Not dead exactly, just gone, replaced by the version that exists right now, in this moment, with these thoughts. And this version will be gone too, soon, replaced by the version that exists tomorrow morning, the version that wakes up and does not quite remember what was being thought about last night while falling asleep. The Lich does not cause this. He does not need to. It happens on its own. The river flows, the candle burns, the ice cream melts, and no force in the universe can make it unmelt. This is not a tragedy. It is physics. But the Lich, by giving this physics a face and a name and a voice, by standing in front of Finn and saying, "I am the end," takes something that is merely true and makes it feel urgent, makes it feel personal, makes it feel like a threat rather than a fact. And the show, by having Finn stand his ground despite this, makes the response to that threat feel equally personal. You are not fighting a universal law. The decision is about how to feel about it. There is a concept in thermodynamics called heat death, the theoretical endpoint of the universe where all energy has been distributed evenly across all matter and no further work can be done. No movement, no change, no chemical reactions, no biological processes, no thought, just a vast, even, silent, lukewarm nothing stretching in every direction forever. It is not a violent end. It is a quiet one. The universe does not explode. It simply stops being interesting. It reaches thermal equilibrium and stays there. And when the Lich talks about sailing to 1 billion worlds and extinguishing every light, he is describing something very close to heat death. He is not angry about the lights. He does not resent their warmth. He is simply carrying out the process that the universe, if left to its own devices, will carry out anyway. He is accelerating the inevitable. And there is a personal dimension to this that the show handles with particular grace. Because the heat death of the universe is an abstraction. It is a concept you can hold in your mind without feeling it in your chest. But the Lich is not just about cosmic endings. He is about the endings that happen every day. The endings that are not theoretical, but intimate. The friendship that fades. The parent who dies. The childhood that ends. The relationship that does not survive the change in one person or the other. The moment of realizing that a person will never again be who they were last year, and that version will never come back, and cannot even be fully remembered. These are Lich moments. These are moments where something ends and you cannot prevent it and you cannot undo it, and it cannot even be fully understood. You can only stand in the aftermath and decide what to do next. And the decision to do anything at all, to keep going, to build something new where something old has fallen, that is the show's answer to the Lich, repeated in every episode, in every storyline, in every character arc from beginning to end. Finn loses his arm in Escape from the Citadel. He does not get it back, not really, not the original. He grows a new one, a grass arm, something strange and different and not quite right. And he keeps going. Princess Bubblegum is overthrown. Her kingdom, her life's work, is taken from her by a con man. She does not collapse. She adapts. She lives in a shack. She does science. She waits. And eventually, she gets her kingdom back. Not because the universe owed it to her, but because she refused to accept the ending as the end. Marceline watches everyone she has ever loved die or forget her, one after another, for 1,000 years. She does not become the Lich. She becomes a musician. She turns her grief into songs. She takes the pain of impermanence and makes it beautiful. Not because beauty solves the problem of impermanence, it does not, but because the act of creation, the act of taking the rawness of loss and shaping it into something that can be heard and felt and shared, is itself a refusal to accept the Lich's conclusion. It is a tiny, individual, completely irrational act of defiance against the tendency of things to fall apart. And the show treats these tiny acts of defiance as the most important things in the world. And this patience of the Lich is itself a kind of horror that the show deploys with remarkable restraint. Most villains in children's television are urgent. They have plans that must be executed now, schemes that must succeed today, deadlines that must be met before the hero can intervene. This urgency creates drama, but it also creates weakness because urgency implies vulnerability. A villain who must act quickly is a villain who can be outpaced. The Lich has no urgency. He has no deadlines. He does not need to succeed today or tomorrow or next century. He can wait. He has been waiting since before the Mushroom War. He waited in the amber prison beneath the Candy Kingdom. He waited inside the snail. He waited inside Billy's corpse. He waited inside Sweet Pea. And he will keep waiting because time does not cost him anything. Every second that passes is 1 second closer to the end he serves, regardless of whether he does anything or not. The universe is already moving in his direction. Entropy is already doing his work. He is the only villain in Adventure Time who does not need to win. He just needs to outlast everyone else. And yet the show exists. The adventures continue. Finn wakes up every morning in a treehouse built on a post-apocalyptic wasteland and decides to help people. Jake stretches himself into improbable shapes to protect his friends. Princess Bubblegum rebuilds her kingdom every time it falls. Marceline plays her bass and sings songs about feelings that are 1,000 years old. BMO plays make-believe with kitchen utensils and sings songs to itself in the mirror and treats every day like it is the first day of existence, filled with wonder and confusion and delight. And the show never treats BMO as naive or foolish for this. It treats BMO as wise in a way that is inaccessible to more sophisticated characters, because BMO has never asked whether life has meaning. The question has simply never occurred to BMO, and in the philosophy of Adventure Time, that is not a limitation. It is a superpower. These are not rational responses to the Lich's philosophy. They are absurd responses. They are the revolt that Camus described. They are the boulder being pushed up the hill by people who know, on some level, that the hill has no top. And the show celebrates them, not with triumph, but with tenderness. Not with a swelling score and a triumphant montage, but with small, quiet moments of connection that pass almost without notice. Two characters sitting together, watching a sunset, saying nothing, needing nothing. And in those moments, the Lich becomes a little less real, not because anything has been proven, but because two people are together, and together is the opposite of nothing. The show makes the Catalyst Comet mythology explicit about this dynamic. The revelation that both Finn and the Lich are incarnations of the same cosmic cycle, one creative and one destructive, establishes that the conflict between meaning and meaninglessness is not a bug in the system. It is the system. The universe, as Adventure Time imagines it, is built on this oscillation: creation and destruction, growth and decay, hope and nihilism. Neither one wins permanently. Neither one is more real than the other. They are partners in an eternal dance, and the dance is the point. This is a profoundly Eastern philosophical framework embedded within a Western animated television show. The idea that creation and destruction are not opposites but complements, that one cannot exist without the other, is central to Hindu and Buddhist traditions. Shiva, in Hindu mythology, is both the destroyer and the regenerator. The Buddhist concept of impermanence, the teaching that all conditioned things are transient, is not presented as a source of despair, but of liberation. If nothing lasts, then there is nothing to cling to. And if there is nothing to cling to, then there is no reason to suffer over loss. Things can be held lightly knowing they will leave. People can be loved knowing they will die. And the lightness of that holding, the openness of that love, is itself a kind of meaning. There is a Buddhist parable about a monk who asks his teacher whether the flame on a candle is the same flame from moment to moment, or a new flame that constantly replaces the old one. The teacher says it is neither and both. It is a process, not a thing. The Lich and Finn are not two fixed beings locked in eternal combat. They are two poles of a process that has no fixed beings and no eternal combats. They are the inhalation and the exhalation, and neither one is the candle. The candle is the process that includes them both. The Lich, seen through this lens, is not evil. He is necessary. He is the clearing of the forest that allows new growth. He is the fire that makes way for fresh seeds. He is the winter that must come before the spring. He is the exhalation that must follow the inhalation. He is one half of a process that requires both halves to function. And if it were possible to talk to the Lich, to sit him down and explain this to him, he would not listen. Not because he is stupid. He is arguably the most intelligent being in the show. But because listening implies openness, and openness implies incompleteness, and incompleteness is the one thing the Lich will not accept about himself. He is complete, he believes. He is finished. He is the final word, the last page, the closing bracket. And the suggestion that there might be more, that there might be a page after his page, a word after his word, a bracket that opens where his closes, is the one thing he cannot tolerate. It is the one thing that threatens him. Not because it disproves his philosophy, but because it reveals his philosophy to be partial. And a partial truth presented as a whole truth is not a truth at all. It is a lie. And the Lich, who has never lied about anything, who has always told the truth about the void and the end and the meaninglessness of existence, is lying about the most important thing of all. He is lying about whether his truth is the only truth. And this lie, this single fundamental structural lie at the heart of his worldview, is what the show eventually dismantles. Not with an argument, not with a battle, but with a song, with a sacrifice, with a child saying no, with a dog crushing a hand, with the world continuing to exist despite every reason it has been given not to. But Adventure Time does not fully embrace this reading, because the Lich does not want to be part of a process. He does not accept his role as one half of a cosmic cycle. He wants to be the whole cycle. He wants to be the final note in the song, after which no other note is played. He is not Shiva, who destroys and creates in equal measure. He is half of Shiva, the destroying half, with the creating half amputated. He is an incomplete cosmic force insisting that it is the whole story. And this is what makes him dangerous. Not his power, which is immense. Not his intelligence, which is considerable, but his incompleteness. He is a philosophy that has forgotten half of itself. He is nihilism without the part that says, and now what? And this connects to a broader truth about how ideologies function. Every ideology becomes dangerous when it loses the capacity for self-doubt. The Lich never doubts. He never questions. He acts with the certainty of a being who has never once entertained the possibility that he might be seeing only part of the picture. And this certainty, this absolute conviction that his purpose is the only purpose, is what the show ultimately identifies as the true enemy. Not nihilism itself, but the certainty that accompanies it. The refusal to entertain the possibility that there might be another way to see the world. Because even Nietzsche, the great diagnostician of nihilism, never stopped at the diagnosis. His entire philosophical project was aimed at moving through nihilism, not stopping at it. The death of God was supposed to be a beginning, not an end. The Ubermensch was not a destroyer. He was a creator who had first passed through destruction. He was someone who had looked at the void, understood it fully, and then turned away from it to build something that had never existed before. The Lich never turns away. He stares into the void and calls it home. He takes the observation that life has no inherent meaning and converts it into the prescription that life should end. And this leap from observation to prescription, from is to ought, is his fundamental failure. The absence of inherent meaning does not preclude the creation of meaning. It simply means that the meaning has to come from somewhere else, from the painter, from the viewer, from the community that gathers and decides together that something is worth preserving. The Lich, because he cannot create anything, concludes that creation is impossible. He is a being defined by his own incapacities, insisting that those incapacities describe the universe rather than describing himself. There is one more thing worth saying about the relationship between the Lich and the other characters before turning to the final chapters of his arc, and it concerns the Lich's relationship to silence. In most of his appearances, the Lich's most powerful moments are not his speeches but his silences. The moments where the screen holds on his face and no sound plays, the moments where the other characters are talking and reacting and emoting, and the Lich simply stands there, a fixed point of nothing in a sea of something. These silences are the show at its bravest, because silence on television is expensive. It costs attention. It risks losing the viewer. A children's show that sits in silence is a children's show that trusts its audience to feel uncomfortable and stay anyway. And Adventure Time trusts its audience more than almost any show in the history of the medium. The silences of the Lich are the silences of the world after midnight. The silence of a house where everyone is asleep. The silence between the last word you read and the moment you close your eyes. They are the silence of the question that has no answer, held in the air, unresolved and unresolvable. And they are, in their way, among the most beautiful things the show ever created. Because beauty is not only found in what is present, it is also found in what is absent. In the spaces between notes, in the gaps between words, in the moment after the story ends and before sleep begins. The Lich exists in that gap. He has always existed in that gap. He is the thing felt when the lights go out and the room is dark and the mind is alone with its thoughts and the thoughts turn toward the end of things. He is the midnight knowledge that one day this consciousness will not be here. That one day no consciousness will be here. And the show's final, quiet, radical argument is that this knowledge, this terrible, beautiful, true knowledge, does not have to be the last word. It can be the word that comes before the last word. And the last word can be something else. A name, a song, a good night. The show explores this through the Lich's relationship to speech. The Lich rarely speaks. Across all of his appearances, spanning nearly a decade of the show's run, his total dialogue amounts to perhaps a few hundred words. When he does speak, his words carry the weight of inevitability. He does not make threats. He makes statements. He does not tell Finn he will try to kill him. He tells Finn he has come for him. A threat implies uncertainty. A statement implies that the outcome is already determined. And this is the rhetorical strategy of nihilism itself. It does not argue. It declares. It does not say life might be meaningless. It says life is meaningless. And the power of this rhetoric comes from the fact that on a long enough timeline, it is technically correct. Everything does end. Every light does go out. Every system runs down. The Lich is not lying when he says he is the end. He is the end. The question is whether the end is the only part of the story that matters. And this is where Adventure Time makes its most important philosophical move. The show does not argue that the Lich is wrong. It argues that being right is not enough. The Lich is correct that everything ends. He is correct that all things die. He is correct that the universe tends toward entropy and that meaning is not embedded in the fabric of reality like a physical constant. All of this is true, and none of it matters, because the characters in the show do not derive their value from permanence. They derive their value from presence. They are here now. They are alive now. And the fact that this now will not last forever does not make it less real. If anything, it makes it more precious. A diamond that lasted forever would be a geological fact. A flower that blooms for one day is a miracle. The Lich cannot understand this. It is his fundamental limitation. He is a being of such cosmic perspective that he has lost the ability to see the thing right in front of him. He can perceive the heat death of the universe, but he cannot perceive the warmth of a single room. He can comprehend the extinction of all life across every dimension, but he cannot comprehend the value of one life in one moment. He is, paradoxically, the most limited character in the show. His vision is so vast that it is blind. There is a detail from the show's deeper mythology that crystallizes this idea. In the episode Whispers, the Lich refers to himself as the last scholar of Golb. Golb, an entity first glimpsed in the Season 5 episode Pohoi, and fully revealed in the series finale, is a malevolent cosmic force who embodies chaos, entropy, and disorder. Golb inhabits an unknown dimension beyond the normal boundaries of reality. The Lich serves Golb. He is not a free agent. He is a devotee. His nihilism is not a conclusion he has reached through independent inquiry. It is a religious conviction. He worships the void. He studies it. He calls himself the last scholar of Golb, which implies that there were once other scholars, other beings devoted to cosmic entropy. And they are gone now. The Lich is the last one. He is the final adherent of a religion whose only commandment is the cessation of all things. And this reframes the Lich once again. He is not a nihilist in the classical philosophical sense. He is a zealot whose religion is nothingness. He is a fundamentalist whose scripture is silence. And fanaticism, whether it serves a god of creation or a god of destruction, is always the same thing at its core. It is the surrender of independent thought to an absolute conviction that cannot be questioned. This makes the Lich not just a commentary on nihilism, but a commentary on dogmatism itself, on the danger of any ideology taken to its logical extreme without the moderating influence of doubt. Because the characters who survive in Adventure Time, the characters who thrive, are the ones who live with uncertainty. Finn does not know what the meaning of life is. He does not pretend to. He wakes up and does his best, and sometimes he fails, and sometimes he succeeds, and he never has a comprehensive theory of everything that tells him why any of it matters. He just keeps going. Jake lives in the present moment with a canine immediacy that borders on what Zen Buddhists would recognize as mindfulness. He does not worry about the end of the universe. He worries about what is for lunch. And this is not stupidity. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that the cosmic perspective, the Lich's perspective, the view from outside and above and beyond, is not the only perspective. That the view from inside a life, from inside a body, from inside a single moment of being alive and hungry and curious, is just as valid as the view from the end of time. That meaning does not have to be objective to be real. That the sandwich being eaten right now is not less real than the heat death of the universe. In fact, for all practical purposes, it is more real, because it is here. And the heat death is not yet. The Lich's presence in the show also raises a question that Adventure Time never fully answers. Whether the Lich is conscious, whether he is a being with subjective experience. The show gives contradictory signals. On one hand, the Lich speaks, which suggests thought. He makes plans, which suggests intention. On the other hand, he shows no emotion, no preference, no attachment. He does not enjoy destruction. He is more like a natural force than a person. And this ambiguity is philosophically crucial because it mirrors the fundamental uncertainty of nihilism itself. Is meaninglessness a discovery about the world, or is it a projection of a particular kind of mind? When a person stares into the void, is the void really there, or are the eyes just closed? The series finale, Come Along With Me, provides a final commentary on the Lich's role. The episode, running 44 minutes as a 4-part special, aired September 3rd, 2018. In it, Golb is summoned to Oo by Betty Groff and Normal Man. Golb arrives as a massive presence that begins to disassemble reality. Characters are consumed and broken down into their most basic elements. The way the characters respond to this ultimate threat is the show's final philosophical statement. They sing, they harmonize. They create together a sound that is the antithesis of Golb's discord. Not because harmony is more powerful than chaos, but because harmony is more organized. GOL, as the embodiment of entropy, is weakened by order, by structure, by the act of multiple beings working together to create something beautiful. The music opens a crack through which Finn and Simon escape. And then Betty Groff makes a final sacrifice. She merges with Golb. She absorbs the cosmic force of entropy into herself and becomes a new entity. Golb Betty. She does not destroy Golb. She integrates him. She takes chaos into herself and becomes something that is neither purely order nor purely chaos, but a synthesis of both. And she disappears from reality, taking Golb with her, leaving a world that is wounded but intact. Simon, the man she loved, stands below, restored to his human mind at last, watching her vanish. Their love story does not conclude with a reunion. It concludes with a sacrifice that removes one of them from existence entirely. Love does not guarantee a happy ending. But Betty cared. She cared enough to merge with the embodiment of cosmic chaos in order to save the man she loved. And the show treats this caring, this irrational, magnificent caring, as the most powerful force in its universe. There is something deeply resonant about the image of a woman choosing to absorb chaos rather than defeat it. It echoes the real human experience of grief. The loss of a parent cannot be defeated. The end of a marriage cannot be overcome. The knowledge of mortality cannot be conquered. But you can take them into yourself. You can make room for them. A person can become someone who contains grief, who includes loss, who holds mortality as one element among many, in a life that also contains joy and the smell of coffee in the morning, and the sound of rain on a roof at night. This active transformation is the final word on the Lich. You do not defeat the void. You include it. You acknowledge that it is part of you, part of the universe, part of the story, and then you keep telling the story. Even the silence between the notes is part of the music. The finale opens and closes with a framing device set 1,000 years later. Two new characters, Shermie and Beth, explore the ruins of the Candy Kingdom. They find monuments to the heroes of the past, and then they go on their own adventure in a new world built on the ruins of the old one, just as U was built on the ruins of human civilization. The cycle continues. New stories begin where old ones ended. This is the show's final refutation of the Lich. Not a logical refutation, a temporal one. The Lich wanted to end the story, and the story kept going. As long as there is someone left to tell a story, the Lich has failed. The Lich's final meaningful appearance comes in the Distant Lands special Together Again, which premiered on HBO Max on May 20th, 2021. Finn and Jake, now both dead and navigating the afterlife, discover that the farm world Lich's hand has attached itself to New Death, a being who has replaced the original Death as ruler of the dead. The Lich, through New Death, begins destroying the dead worlds, preventing souls from reincarnating. He is not just trying to end current life, he is trying to break the cycle of existence itself. And this is where the Lich's long arc reaches its most pathetic moment. Because the Lich, once a cosmic force that wished for the extinction of all life across every dimension, is now a hand, just a hand. A disembodied appendage clinging to a host, whispering instructions, trying to execute a plan with whatever is left. It is diminishment taken to its logical conclusion, and this diminishment is the show's final argument against the Lich. Nihilism, for all its claims to cosmic truth, can be reduced, can be shrunk, can be brought down from the universal to the trivial. The void is not infinite after all. It is just very large, and very large things can be made very small given enough time and enough people who refuse to cooperate with their own extinction. And the way he is stopped is almost comically anticlimactic. Jake crushes the Lich's hand and throws it into the vastness of the land of the dead. No epic battle, no philosophical confrontation, just a dog stepping on a hand and tossing it away. And this is perfect, because the Lich was never really the threat. The threat was always the idea he represented. And ideas cannot be crushed, but they can be refused. They can be set aside. Jake sees the void. He shrugs. He keeps walking. It is the most Camusian moment in the entire franchise. Imagine Jake happy. There is a quiet beauty to that scene that deserves one more moment of attention. Jake, at this point in the story, is dead. He is not fighting for his life. He is fighting for the right of dead people to be properly dead, to complete their cycle, to reincarnate and begin again. The Lich does not just threaten the living, he threatens the dead. He threatens the process of death itself, the natural cycle that makes new life possible. He wants death to be final, permanent, absolute, without renewal. He wants death to be the Lich, and Jake, by crushing the hand, is asserting something the show has been saying from the beginning. Death is not the enemy. The Lich is. They look similar, they occupy the same philosophical neighborhood, but they are not the same thing. Death is a transition. Death is a termination. Death is a door. The Lich is a wall, and the show demolishes the wall and opens the door. The Lich's journey from cosmic horror to philosophical metaphor to defeated remnant is one of the most carefully constructed character arcs in animation. He begins as a monster, becomes a symbol, is transformed into a child, reasserts himself as a whisper, and finally diminishes into a fragment that can be crushed underfoot. And at every stage across nearly a decade of storytelling, the show uses him to ask the same question: is nihilism true? And at every stage, the show gives the same answer. It does not matter, because here is what the Lich never understands, what nihilism in its pure form never understands. The question of meaning is not a question that needs an answer. It is a question that needs to be lived. Meaninglessness is not solved. It is inhabited. Homes are built on top of it. Children are raised in it. Gardens are planted over the bones of the world that came before. And when the voice in the night tells you that none of it matters, that you are terrible, that you are the Lich, that everything you love will end and be forgotten, you look at it and say, no, I am not the Lich. I am something else. I am something new. And I am still here. The Lich wanted nothing, and in the end, nothing is exactly what he got. Not because he was defeated by a greater force, but because the world kept going without him. The monsters existed before nothing, he said. But something came after them. Something always comes after them. New flesh grew over old bones. New names were given to old horrors. The story continued. It always continues. In 1,000 years, new heroes will find the ruins of the heroes who came before them, and will wonder who they were and what they fought for. And they will go on their own adventures in a world built on the bones of worlds that the Lich tried to destroy. And they will not know the Lich's name. They will not remember his face or his voice or his philosophy, but they will be the living proof that he was wrong. Every breath they take will be evidence against his thesis. Every morning they wake up will be a refutation that no philosopher could improve upon. Not because their existence proves anything, but because their existence is. It simply is. And being, as it turns out, is the one thing the Lich never had an answer for. He could argue against meaning. He could argue against purpose. He could argue against value and significance and importance. But he could never argue against the bare fact of something existing rather than nothing existing. He could never explain why the void he worshipped did not simply remain void. Why the nothing that preceded the monsters did not simply remain nothing. Why something, against all odds and against all logic, came into being and refused to leave. He had no answer for this. He never had an answer for this. And in the end, the show does not give an answer either. Because there is no answer. There is only the fact. Something exists. Existence continues. And while existence continues, the Lich is wrong. Not in his logic, not in his reasoning, not in his predictions about the eventual end of all things, but in the only way that matters, in the present tense, right now, in this moment. He is wrong because something is here, and here is not nothing. A child was raised by an elephant and a pig, and he learned to be good, and the voice inside him that said goodness was a lie got quieter, and quieter and quieter until it was just a whisper, and then it was just a hand, and then it was nothing at all. And that something, that stubborn, beautiful, temporary something is you, lying in the dark, listening to this, still here, still breathing, still part of the story that the Lich tried to end. He said he was the end. He was wrong. And this is the final, most important thing that Adventure Time has to say about nihilism, about the Lich, about the void, about the dark. He was wrong, not factually wrong. Factually, he was largely correct. Everything does end. Everything is temporary. Meaning is not built into the fabric of reality. The universe will eventually reach thermal equilibrium, and there will be no one left to remember that any of this happened. All of this is true, but being factually correct is not the same as being right. Every fact in the universe can be stated and still miss the point. And the point, the thing the Lich missed, the thing nihilism always misses, is that the conversation about meaning is itself meaningful. The question about purpose is itself a purpose. The search for value is itself valuable. Not because it leads somewhere, not because there is a treasure at the end of the philosophical rainbow, but because the searching is what it feels like to be alive. And being alive, whatever else it is or is not, is the one thing the Lich cannot do. Not because the end will never come, it will, but because the end is not here yet, and until it is, every moment is a choice. Every breath is a revolt. Every heartbeat is an argument against the void, made not with words but with blood, with oxygen, with the simple, unreasonable, magnificent fact of being alive. And if this is the kind of thing you would like to hear more of, then subscribing to the channel really does help keep these videos coming, and it costs nothing at all. Thank you for being here. Good night.